Put your hand on your stomach for a second. Right now, it is probably fine, quiet, maybe a little full. Now imagine it has been empty for 4 days. You are in a cold valley. It is the end of a long winter, about 15,000 years ago. The berries are gone. The big animals have moved on. You dug for roots this morning and found frozen dirt. You are not weak yet. You are past weak. Your body has started quietly eating itself to keep your brain running. A child in your group stopped crying yesterday, which is worse than crying. This was not a rare disaster for our ancestors. This was a season. It came every single year. So here is the question. How did ancient humans survive when there was simply nothing to eat? Now, you probably already have a picture in your head. Brave hunters, clever spears, always finding the next mammoth just in time. That is the movie version, and it is the guess almost everybody makes. But that is not what kept people alive, not even close. Because you cannot hunt your way out of a winter when there is nothing to hunt. The animals are gone, the plants are dead, and a spear is useless against an empty landscape. Here is the thing. Nobody tells you. For almost all of human history, hunger was not the emergency. Hunger was the baseline. Food came in short, wild bursts, and then it vanished for weeks. So people did not survive by finding more food. They survived by being incredibly good at going without it. Think about how strange that makes you. You get hungry a few hours after lunch and you call it starving. Your ancestors went days, sometimes weeks, on almost nothing and got up and walked 20 miles anyway. The reason they could do that is not willpower. It is built into your body right now, and by the end of this, you will feel it. Stay with me, because the thing that saved them is the same thing that is quietly making us sick today. Let us start with the part we get most wrong. We imagine the ancient past as one long buffet of wild meat and berries. It was not. It was a calendar of feast and famine. There is a name for the worst stretch of it. In a lot of northern cultures, it was simply called the starving time. Late winter into early spring, when last year's stores ran out and nothing new had grown yet. Anthropologists studying recent hunter gatherer groups saw this pattern again and again. Long good stretches, then a hard hungry gap every year, like clockwork. Some of these groups would lose real body weight every lean season and put it back on in the good months. Their weight rose and fell across the year, like a tide, and the people who lived through it were not surprised by it. They planned their entire lives around the fact that the food would run out, which brings us to the first real answer. And it is not out in the world. It is inside you. Here is something genuinely weird about humans. Compared to almost every other animal our size, we are fat. A wild chimp, our close cousin, carries very little body fat. A healthy human carries a lot more. And that is normal, not a flaw. There is a concept in biology here worth knowing. Fat is not just padding, fat is a battery. Every pound of it is stored fuel, waiting for the day the food stops. When you stop eating, your body does something clever. It burns through its sugar stores fast, in about a day. Then it flips a switch and starts running mostly on fat instead. Scientists call that switch ketosis. In plain terms, your body changes what kind of fuel it runs on, so it can keep going for weeks. That is not a diet trend. That is a survival system that is millions of years old. The leading idea is that our ancestors who stored fat, well, simply outlived the ones who did not. Now, to be fair, some of our fat is also about our huge, hungry brains, which need steady fuel. But the famine buffer is a big part of the story. Every hungry season quietly deleted the people with no reserves. And here is the part that should land. You are the descendant of the ones who were good at being hungry. So how long can a human actually go with no food at all? The answer is longer than you would ever guess. A person with normal fat reserves can survive for weeks without a single meal. Your body just keeps working through that fat day after day. When even the fat starts running low, it turns to the last resort. It begins breaking down your own muscle for fuel, which is the beginning of the end. But water is a different story entirely. You can last weeks without food. You will not last more than a few days without water. So thirst, not hunger, was often the faster killer, which is why ancient camps cluster around rivers, springs, and lakes on almost every map we have. Hunger was survivable for a shockingly long time. That is the whole point. The body was built to wait the famine out. But here's where it gets genuinely wild. We do not have to guess that this happened. The starving is written down, not in words, in bones and teeth. When a child is severely malnourished, their growing body basically hits pause. And when growth stops and then starts again, it leaves a mark. In teeth, it shows up as faint lines and pits across the enamel. Dentists have a name for it, linear enamel hypoplasia, which just means gaps where the enamel did not form, right? In the long bones of the leg, you can sometimes see thin lines too, from growth grinding to a halt. So an archaeologist can pick up a skeleton that is 10,000 years old and read right there in the teeth the exact winters when that person nearly starved as a kid. You can literally count the bad years. And when researchers look, they find these stress marks everywhere across the ancient world. This was not one unlucky tribe. This was the human condition. Okay, the body buys you time, but time runs out. So when the good food was gone, what did people actually put in their mouths? The answer is a whole category of foods that nobody wanted. Researchers call them famine foods or fallback foods. These are the things you only eat when the alternative is dying. Number one, and it sounds insane, is tree bark. Not the hard outer bark, the soft inner layer, right, against the wood. Peoples across the far north, including the Sami of Scandinavia, would strip the inner bark of pine trees. Then dry it, pound it into a rough flour, and stretch it into a kind of bread. It barely feeds you, but it fills you, and it kept people alive through the worst months. Next, acorns, which seems easy, until you learn they are basically poison. Raw acorns are packed with bitter chemicals called tannins that make you sick. So peoples in California and elsewhere worked out how to soak and rinse them for hours, leaching out the poison until what was left was safe to eat. Think about the desperation and the patience buried in that. Somebody, a long time ago, was hungry enough to keep eating the poison nut until they figured out how to make it not kill them. And when the big animals were gone, the menu got a lot smaller. You stop being picky when you are starving. So people ate the things we now flinch at: insects, grubs, beetle larvae, dug out of rotting logs. It sounds gross, but pound for pound, insects are packed with protein and fat. For a hungry body, a handful of grubs is a genuinely good meal. Down by the water, there were shellfish, snails, and whatever small creatures could be caught by hand. Eggs if you could find a nest, frogs, lizards, small birds. A child too young to hunt could still turn over rocks and fill a basket. None of this is glamorous. None of it feeds an army. But this is the quiet food that carried people between the big kills. And then there were the truly grim ones, boiling old hides, chewing leather, scraping the last marrow out of bones already cracked once. When there is nothing, you eat what is not really food, and you survive one more week. But the smartest answer to hunger was not eating the bark. It was making sure you never got that desperate in the first place. The real breakthrough was storage. Beating time itself. A fresh kill rots in days. A summer of berries is gone by autumn. unless you can lock that food away and open it in the dead of winter. So people got very, very good at preserving. They dried meat in thin strips in the sun and wind until it would keep for months. They smoked fish over slow fires, which dries it and coats it against rot. Some of the coldest climate peoples buried meat and fish to ferment it on purpose. It smells appalling, but it stores energy, and stored energy is a life saved in March. They dug storage pits and lined them, hiding food in the cold ground like a bank vault. And here is one of the great inventions you have never heard of. Indigenous peoples of North America made something called pemmican. You take dried meat, pound it to a powder, and mix it with melted fat, and sometimes dried berries. The result is a dense brick of pure fuel that lasts for years without spoiling. Pound for pound, it is one of the most efficient survival foods ever made. A bag of it could carry you across a frozen country. That is the shift that changed everything. Food stopped being something you found today. It became something you saved from your past self, for your future self. And we have proof that ancient people thought about food this carefully. In the Alps, hikers once found a body frozen in the ice. He is now called Otzi, and he died more than 5,000 years ago. The ice preserved him so well that scientists could study his actual stomach. His last meal was not scraps. It was a smart meal for a hard journey. He had eaten the fatty meat of a wild goat, along with red deer and grain. That is a heavy, high-fat load, exactly what you want before crossing a freezing mountain. 5,000 years ago, a man fueled up on fat for the cold ahead. Same instinct you feel before a long day with no time to stop and eat. But I have saved the most important answer for last, because it is not a food, or a tool, or a trick of the body. It is other people. Picture one hunter who has a spectacular day and kills a large animal. That is far more meat than one family can eat before it goes bad. So what do you do with a windfall? You cannot store fast enough. You give it away. In group after group that anthropologists have studied, from the Kalahari to Tanzania, the rule is the same. A big kill does not belong to the hunter. It gets shared out across the whole band. And this is not just people being nice. It is the single best insurance system ever invented. Because here is the logic. Today you had a great hunt and I had nothing, so you feed my family. Next month you come home empty and starving. And I feed yours. Nobody can be lucky every day. But the group can be. By pooling every windfall, the band turns wild, random luck into something steadier. You are not betting your children's lives on your own good day. You are spreading that risk across 20 people, across a whole year. Now, some of this sharing was surely enforced by pressure and reputation, not pure kindness. A hunter who hoarded would be remembered, and one day he would be the hungry one, but the result is the same. Either way, the thing that carried our species through the hungry seasons was not the strongest hunter. It was the fact that we refused to starve alone. And yet, sometimes, all of it failed at once. The stores ran out. The sharing had nothing left to share. The backups were gone. And in the rarest, darkest moments, the evidence tells us people ate the only thing left, each other. In a cave in England called Gough's Cave, archaeologists found human bones from about 15,000 years ago. And those bones carry cut marks, butchery marks, made with stone tools. Some skulls appear to have been shaped into cups. Now, researchers still debate what this really means. It may have been survival cannibalism in a terrible season. It may have been a burial ritual we do not understand. The honest answer is that we are not certain, but it is a stark reminder of how thin the line was. For most of our history, we were only ever a few missed meals from the edge. Now, you would think farming fixed all of this. Plant your food, harvest it, stop starving. Problem solved. But here is the twist almost nobody expects. In some ways, farming made the hunger worse. A hunter-gatherer ate dozens of different wild foods. So if one failed, others carried them. A farmer bet everything on one or two crops in one field. And when that harvest failed from drought or frost or disease, everyone starved at once. We even have this written in the bones again. Many early farming skeletons are shorter, with more of those starvation lines than the foragers before them. By tying ourselves to the farm, we traded a life of small hungers for the risk of one enormous one, solving hunger. It turns out was a lot harder than just growing food. So think about that for a second. Your ancestors did not beat hunger. Nobody beats hunger, they out-endured it. With a body that hoarded fat, foods that barely counted as food, and a group that shared everything. And that history did not leave you when the famines did. It is still in your body right now. That switch to burning fat when you skip a meal. That is the ancient survival system, still installed. The reason your body clings to every extra pound so stubbornly. It is not broken. It is doing exactly what it was built to do. It is bracing for a starving time that, for you, is never going to come. For the first time in 300,000 years, a huge part of humanity has food that never runs out. And our famine-proof bodies, built for scarcity, do not know what to do with endless plenty. The thing that saved them from starving is the same thing making us sick. You are walking around with a survival machine tuned for a world that no longer exists. So the next time your stomach growls 2 hours after lunch, maybe cut it a little slack. It is not being dramatic. It is just very, very old. And it remembers when this was serious. There is a whole hidden world of these things. Systems your body still runs for a life you never lived. Stick around if you are curious about being human.